Hello YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. And we've recently been doing a series on a pedalboard build. And it's a series of videos of things I really like in a pedalboard. And we started off with a, I'm not sure what order it's in exactly. I know we did the Soulman MIDI controller, then we did the MIDI Solutions Quadra through, and then we did the power supply, right? And it was a pig tone power supply. Oh, I forgot it. We did a video on the smart clock too. Okay. And then we did the Ticino cable. And I should update you on that. As it turns out, I may have to change that out and get a right angle cable because it is taking up a little more space than I'd like. And all the pedals I want to put on the pedalboard won't fit. You know, I'll tell you what. For those planning on putting together a pedal board, you know, depending on how, I guess, I shouldn't say complicated, but what features you want, it can go from very simple to very complicated very quickly and very time consuming. And this is the case here for me. You know, deciding how to distribute the pedals I want on the board and those kinds of things. And in fact, now we're building this little mini board. Mini pedal board is small, basically. But I want to show you, I'm in the middle of putting together a bigger pedal board, right? And I pretty much have a similar board in my studio room, so this is kind of like for Studio B, aka my living room. Now, this bigger board, pretty similar. It has a MIDI Soulman controller. It does have this board, this bigger board I'm going to show you here. It's a Pedal Train Novo 24. And it's got the MIDI controller, the smart clock tempo clock, it's got the quadra through box, right? And then an assortment of pedals, right? And I'll tell you, I'm right in the process, right in the middle of it, of providing three things for the pedal board, okay? First thing, power. Right, to each pedal, and this has to be clean power. It can't just be, you know, plug it into the wall and be done with it. You know, especially if we've got a ton of pedals, because it turns out, you know, AC power, especially from wall outlets, is usually not very clean. It's kind of dirty, and as a result, it results in noise, and you want to avoid that if you can. You know, plus usually the power is not all that evenly distributed, if you like. And this is where a power supply, right, especially an isolated power supply, comes in very handy. Alright, so that's the first thing, is power. And since we're on the subject of power, let me tell you something. I was convinced that I needed the Voodoo Lab Power Digital for my digital pedals, but what I was really surprised about is that the little Pigtone $30 power supply can handle most of the pedals on the little board. So I'm not even sure that I need both, quite frankly. And I've tried it, I didn't hear any noise. You know, with a little Pigtone Well, we'll get into that. We'll see. Okay, so that's the first thing is power. Second thing, MIDI. MIDI. Hi, MIDI. Okay, now MIDI is essential, and all the pedals that I have will require MIDI, as well as, of course, the MIDI controller, MIDI distribution to all the pedals that can accept MIDI. And I'm also lumping in there tempo control. So not only do you have program changes, which basically allow you to just change presets on each pedal, all at the same time from your MIDI controller. So you hit one switch, it changes the presets to all the pedals. But also, I'm lumping in tap tempo control from the MIDI smart clock, and it provides MIDI clock to all of the pedals so that they are in sync tempo-wise. And you would say, well, why do you need that? Very simply, for delays especially, reverbs as well sometimes, but usually delays in particular, you know, and any kind of effect that works with tempo basically. And then on top of that, for loopers, you wouldn't think so, but yes, because as you'll discover, if you're, let's say you're trying to loop to anything from a bass pattern to even a drum machine or that kind of thing, you'll discover that without MIDI sync, right, that, well, that the loop the first couple times around, right, they're in time, but then they start to stray, and all of a sudden they're like way off time, right? So unless you have MIDI clock sync, right, it's kind of a pain that way. So that's the second thing, right, is MIDI. So I always see a pedal board as power, MIDI, and of course the third one, audio. Right, requiring audio cables, a lot of audio cables. Remember, these pedals, depending on how many pedals you have, you know, if they're stereo especially, you know, that can be 2 inputs, 2 outputs. There, right there's 4 cables, right? Now, and I mean, you can see these on YouTube. You know, you see these professional pedal board installers, right? And they're making their own cables and those kinds of things. You can also buy a bunch of solderless cable kits and that kind of thing, which is great, but it adds to the cost, you know. And I'll tell you, for my pedal board, you know, I mean, sure, I could send it in and with all my pedals and pay $1,000 to have a pedal board put together for me, that kind of thing. But I definitely would like to avoid the cost of that, and basically just want to put it together myself, you know, for a lot less cost and things. And it's not quite as nice, you know, especially, you know, pedals are spaced apart more. And these days, you know, with pedal boards, to get them to fit all these pedals in this little space, you know, you need right angle cables and those kinds of things. And let me tell you one other thing. I guess I should go back. If you get a right angle MIDI cable, man, those are pretty crappy, really. And the reason I say that is I've had them fall apart on me. Anyway, however, you know, you can get a 6-pack of seismic audio cables from Amazon. I think it's like $30 or something, you know. Yeah, they seem to do the job just fine, you know. Now, you know, of course you could spend, you know, hundreds of dollars on super fancy cables and things. Anyway, if you wanted to, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, it's just the cost of it, of course, you know, or making your custom cables. which are nice too, I mean. But for me, I found that, you know, cables go bad, and on a pedal board, you know, it's a real pain, especially if you paid a lot for that cable, to have to replace it all the time, you know. So I basically just go with kind of just, you know, okay cables. They're not the greatest, but and just never had a problem sound-wise. And in fact, sometimes I've had expensive cables before, and I found that the cheaper ones sounded better. Go figure that. Anyway, that's the third part of things you have to add to your pedal board, right? Now, here's the other thing, and this is quite a common mistake, and I've done it plenty, and I'm still doing it. And that is, when you get a pedal board, you know, you want to cram it with every pedal you've got, normally, right? And I don't think that's a good idea at all, because, you know, the more your guitar goes through all the pedals and things, right, it kind of degrades the guitar sound a bit, you know, and you kind of lose that immediacy of plugging into an amp if you know, do too many pedals and things. Okay, so I'm going to show you this large pedal board, and that's the thing, trying to decide what pedals to put on there, you know, is real tough. Now, there are some that I know will go on there for sure. One of my favorite pedals of all is the Eventide H9. You know, I mean, I really like that pedal. However, at the moment, I've got two of those on the big board, right? And I'm not sure I want to do that. I may just put one on there. I'm not sure. We're working on that. Anyway, let me show you where I am on that project. You know, and that brings up another thing. You know, the little board, you know, can be very nice as well. But I'm not sure how elaborate I want to make it either, you know. Right now the little board is basically, you know, under my table. You've probably seen it in videos. It's got cables all over the place and little pedals, you know, they're not even attached and things. Because I do a lot of experimenting with different pedals, you know. But I definitely wanted to clean that up a little bit, you know. And that's the thing, the little pigtone does that just fine. Now, do I want to add MIDI and so on to it? I think so, you know. Well, anyway, so let's take a look at this big board here. Okay, now I wanted to show you this. This is a big Pedalboard build I'm in the middle of. It's a pedal trained Novo 24 pedal board. I guess it's aircraft aluminum. And I'll tell you what, here's something that really surprised me, and that is how heavy these pedal boards get. It's really quite something. Pretty amazing. Now, and I can't take credit for this, I didn't do this. When I bought it, it actually came with a already connected on the back of it, a power strip. Look at that, black power strip. And notice it's got two things plugged into it. Alright, one is an AC adapter right there. Okay, that's on the back of the pedal board. And then a power cable right there. And this one is actually connected. If you looked at the last video, which was on power supplies, right, the pigtone power supply, well, this is a similar one, and it's actually mounted under the board, right, And so that powers that, the AC adapter, right? And then this power cable right here, right, actually powers a Voodoo Labs Power Digital power supply, which is also mounted underneath the board, and I'll show you those here in a bit. So there's a power switch, turn it on, that turns on the pedal board, and this is the back of the power supply, or back of the power strip, and that's the cable that goes out to the wall. It's pretty long and pretty thick too. Okay, now this is not set in stone, and that's what's nice about these pedal boards, is that you know, they're all set down with Velcro basically, or dual lock, so you can always change this, you know, change pedals around and stuff like that. Now, what I've done so far is basically, I'm still in the process of deciding which pedals to put on there, and they're held in right now with a dual lock right there. Alright, so they're not going anywhere. And see these red? That's power. It's going under the board. Power going under the board. Power going under the board. All those are going to the Voodoo Labs Power Digital. And pretty much, I mean, I'm still putting this together, you know. But there's as much going on under the board as there is on top of the board. And I mean, the pedals, I haven't decided yet exactly what we're going to do here. These three pedals right here. So those are all ready to go. They have MIDI, and I didn't use the right MIDI cables. Right angle MIDI cables, I should say. But I've got the audio plugged in and all that business. Okay, and so I've got power to these, and that's working out well. Still quite a bit to do. Let me show you under the board here. So to your left there, you got the power digital, then you have a secondary little tiny power supply, and a bunch of cabling under here. And I've yet to mount the MIDI quadra through. Will be under there as well. Okay, just an update real quick. This is a big pedal board here, and this may be a possibility, I don't know yet. There's a H9. Now over here I may have space. Notice I plugged in the smart clock, it's ready to go. Connected to the Soulman via MIDI cable under the board. But right here is a Specular Tempest, and it's not hooked up in the cables and things, but that may be able to fit there, maybe, if I use right angle cables. But I'll remove it for right now. Then the other thing is, here's a Marasenzo, a guitar synthesizer pedal. And this pedal is really cool, except it requires this little MIDI I/O. Now I could mount that underneath the board, or just leave it as is. It's sideways, and the reason is you've got to make space for the MIDI cables in and out, right, for the MIDI I/O, right, and it's got to go through this little box before it goes here. And then over here we've got another synthesizer pedal. So a bunch of synthesizer pedals, and there's a bass line. Man, this is taking a while, but it's coming together pretty nicely. You know, the nice thing with these boards overall is that nothing's permanent, you know. I mean, you can remove these and move them around with Velcro and things. It's a pain in the butt, but you know, it's not like it's permanent, which is very nice, because things change so often, you know, different cables or different pedals, I mean, that kind of thing, which may require different cables. Okay. MIDI. He's taking a nap. Okay, now, one other thing I want to show you is, you see these red cables right there? Those are going into the Eventide H9s. There's two of them for the moment. I may cut that back to one, I don't know. But the reason they're red right here is this goes into a Voodoo Lab digital, which actually is under the board here. Yeah, see, there it is. You can see the word digital. Anyways, that little power supply unit. And that is actually powering at the moment the M5, but notice it's using a black cable, power cable. The two H9s, which are using the red cables. And so three things at the moment. And the rest is all powered by a little, you know, basically kind of like the Pigtone power supply, same thing. The equivalent anyway. But the reason these are red is because they use a different polarity than the M5, which uses, even though it all goes to the power digital, remember they're isolated, so you can have one be negative, right, center negative, like these, or center positive, like those. Now, it may be the other way around, I'm not sure, I don't remember. But anyway, so these are possibilities. We'll see. So it's a work in progress. Okay, so that's where we're at right now on the big board, right? And it may replace the little board that's under the table right now. You know, I'm not sure. It's a work in progress, okay? So we'll see. I got to, you know, see how that's progressing. I'll tell you one thing, though. It is very, very nice to just hit one power switch and have all these pedals come on. You know, it's a lot better than having to plug in each one. And, you know, I had it in an AC adapter strip where you'd had to hit the power for each one, you know. And I mean, it was fine at first, but it got old real quick, you know, having to hit 8, 9, 10 buttons just to freaking turn on your pedal board. So that's no good. So this is a much better situation. And I mean, I'll definitely keep you updated. Now we still have a lot of work to do on this little board build as well. So we'll continue this series. Alright, just wanted to show you that. And where I'm at on it right now. You know, and I'll tell you, it causes me a lot of anxiety, quite frankly. Especially deciding what to put on the big board, what to put on the little board. How elaborate, you know, do I want MIDI control and all that business on the little board? Don't know. Here's another issue, and this one drives me nuts, and probably drives a lot of guitarists nuts, and that is, for a looper, I have a, you know, boomerang looper, and it's quite big. And not given the fact that I have not only the looper, but I have the sidecar, right, which is basically another pedal the size of the looper, and it's huge. The two together are almost the length of the entire pedal board, right? And so the solution is, one, make it a separate board altogether, and then you've got to connect all the cables, right, for the big board and the looper, you know, which is okay. It's a possibility, you know, but if you're moving that around a lot, it'll get very old very quickly. Another solution would be to break it up and not use the sidecar, but that kind of defeats the purpose to me, because then the looper pedal would fit. And I have one board like that, because it also has a boomerang, but I don't have a sidecar pedal for it. So, and it fits on there, you know. It takes up a lot of space though, but it's very nice, convenient to have it on there. So that's things to decide, you know. And that's what I was talking about deciding which pedals to put on there and those kinds of things. Anyway, we'll see. I'll definitely keep you updated, probably in the next episode. Alright, so very good. See you next time. Okay.